Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to be doing our open response fundraising day 2. So here is this particular lesson. So I want to remind you what our why was with day 1, of course. So we wanted to make sure that we were making sense of problems and persevering to solve them. We wanted to make sure that we were practicing creating models, becoming more precise, and we had a math message that particular day that we were going to try to use similar strategies or methods to solve the problem for the open response. So let's review or reintroduce that open response and kind of remind you what you were supposed to have done yesterday. So on the left, we have 2 fifth grade classes raised money for the local animal shelter. There are 20 students in Class A. Each student raised $12. There are 20 students in Class B. Each student in Class B raised 1 and 5/10 times as much as each student in Class A. And then you were supposed to answer how much money did the students in both classrooms raise all together, and look back at your work and show or explain how you can tell your solution makes sense. So if you will recall, when I introduced this problem to you, we talked about how when we explain, we're not explaining the steps that we used, but the reason that we had an answer that made sense. So kind of explaining why you did what you did and why your answer would make sense in that particular instance. So what you're going to be doing today is looking back at your problem and thinking about, did I do all of the things that I should have done? And we'll kind of go over that here in just a minute. First, we're going to take a look at a couple of sample answers and talk about what was right, what was wrong, what could this person have done better. So let's take a look at those. So here we have a couple of students that have done this particular problem, 2 different students, in fact. On the left, we have, we'll call this student A, and this will be student B. So if we take a look at what this student did, we have Class A, Class B. Looks like they put the classes together, and let's see if we can try to make sense of what they did here. 20 students times $12. Looks like they multiplied that out, got $240. So checking their multiplication might be a good idea to look at to see if they did it correctly. Class B, 20 students, 12 times 1 and 5/10 equals 18, I think is what that says. 18 times 20, they got $360. They took the total from here and the total from here. They added those together, got $600. So the first thing that you want to think about is, does their answer make sense? Do you understand why they did what they did? So let's look back to see how they explained. I think my answer makes sense because I know 20 times 12 equals 240. I also know that 12 times 1 and 5/10 equals 18, and 18 times 20 equals 360. I also know that 240 plus 360 equals 600. That's how I know my answer makes sense, $600. So thinking about that, did they really explain why they did what they did? To me, that sounds like all they did was tell us what they did, not necessarily explain why their answer makes sense. Let's take a look at student B. Student B listed Class A, Class B. We have 20 students times $12, $240. It says raise. Class B, we have 240 raised. I think that's a multiplication sign, kind of hard to tell. We're going to say that it is 1 and 5/10. They got 360. So it shows a plus sign in between there. So they're adding those two numbers. They got $600. Class A and Class B altogether raised $600. Now this gets a little sloppy here because it looks like they kind of changed their mind about what they wanted to say. So I knew that my answer made sense because I divided, I think is what that's supposed to say. 600 by 1/2, and I got 300, and both of the numbers I added to get 600, was able to round to 600, so I knew that it made sense. So again, thinking about, are we giving the steps? Are we explaining why we did what we did and why it makes sense? I'm not so sure that either one of these students did that. So I want you to kind of think about these answers. Think about what you did to solve the problem. And that should guide you in your revision and your editing. So some things to think about as you go back to revise and edit your own work. Did you correct any miscalculations or wrong answers? Did you answer all parts with detail? Did you make sure your answers were precise? Did you create models where needed? And the biggest one of all, did you explain how your answers make sense? So that's been kind of the core of this lesson, is making sure that we don't just list the steps. We have to understand why we're doing the math. Why are we multiplying, or why are we adding? So think about those things as you go to finish up and revise and edit your work. So what you'll be doing in class is, of course, revising and editing your final copy of your open response. And you're going to have options, 3 options. So you can either share your final answers on Flipgrid, you can put them in Google Slides, or you can put them in DoodleBuddy. I'm going to give you those options. So good luck and happy problem solving.